Welcome back to I-24 News. I'm Terry Moran, and today we're diving into a major story unfolding on the global stage, a reported $158 billion meltdown involving the Vladimir Putin-led Kremlin, and the surprising rejection of a proposed deal by both China and India following what's being called a final warning from the United States. Let's unpack what we know so far, the implications for geopolitics and economics, and what it could mean for you. According to recent reports, Russia's energy exports, the kind of strategic resources that traditionally bind Moscow to partners, have hit around $158 billion in roughly a 6-month period following its invasion of Ukraine. That staggering number underscores how critical energy exports have become for Russia's coffers, even in the face of Western sanctions. Now, what's emerging is that Putin had been negotiating or expecting support from China and India under a deal framework, but both nations have now balked, shifting the balance. China and India's rejection of the deal, reportedly following what Washington described as a final warning, suggests that the U.S. has intensified its diplomatic and economic pressure on third parties to align with its sanctions regime and strategic posture towards Moscow. India and China, two of the largest energy consumers and strategic actors in Asia, had been under immense scrutiny for continuing significant energy trade with Russia. For instance, recent commentary points out that the U.S. administration has signaled to both countries' leadership that continuing to import large volumes of Russian oil and other strategic commodities could trigger severe consequences. So what's behind the breakdown of this deal? First, from Russia's side, the Kremlin asserts that it continues offering high quality at a lower price when it comes to energy exports to nations such as China and India. A Russian spokesperson insisted that Moscow's agreements are made on independent terms, and that no foreign power should dictate its buyers' choices. This tone suggests Russian frustration with Western sanctions, but also a recognition that some of its traditional partners may be reassessing involvement. From the perspective of China and India, there are two overlapping dynamics. One is strategic autonomy. Both nations have long emphasized the right to make independent decisions about trade and energy security. The second is increasing pressure from the U.S., which appears to be saying, either you fall in line with our sanctions regime or you face secondary consequences. With Washington tightening the screws on Russia's oil revenue and seeking to choke off Moscow's ability to fund its war effort, third-party buyers face choices. London-based and other Western institutions are being prompted to deny services and insurance to shipments of Russian commodities, raising costs and uncertainty. The rejection takes on larger meaning because it signals a shift in global economic alignments. If China and India distance themselves from Moscow's large-scale deals, Russia faces growing isolation. It also gives the U.S. greater leverage. Not only are sanctions aimed at Russia directly, but the message to third-party buyers is increasingly clear. The final warning may refer to Washington indicating that continuing deep trade with Russia risks the buyers themselves being targeted or sidelined in the global system. Let me walk you through the stakes. For Russia, the loss of committed buyers among the major Asian powers means reduced revenue, a constriction of export markets, and potentially higher cost of doing business. Energy export figures of $158 billion in the 6-month period pointed to Moscow's ability to maintain revenue streams despite sanctions, but if buyers turn away, that stream could shrink rapidly. For China and India, rejecting the deal is a strategic gamble. Cheap Russian energy has been attractive, but longer-term risk from Western sanctions, dollar-based financial systems, insurance access, and geopolitical reputation may outweigh the short-term benefits. For the U.S. and its allies, this moment may represent a win, if they can isolate Russia not only through direct sanctions but by persuading China and India to step back. The broader aim of reducing Moscow's war funding comes closer. However, there are important caveats. China and India are unlikely to completely sever ties with Russia. Variations of business as usual will continue. Moreover, Russia may dig deeper into alternative markets, currencies, barter arrangements, or domestic adjustments to compensate. The headline figure of $158 billion remains massive and suggests Russia has other pathways for revenue for now, but each pathway may carry higher risk, lower margins, or less reliability. For viewers in Pakistan and the wider South Asia region, this development matters for several reasons. First, energy and trade ripple effects. As China or India pivot, regional suppliers may shift focus or prices may change. Second, strategic ramifications. How China positions itself vis-a-vis Russia and the US will influence the regional alignment, as will India's decisions in its US relationship. Third, Global supply chain and financial ramifications, shifts in shielding Russia or not, and in payments mechanism away from dollars, could affect how regional banks and companies behave. Looking ahead, keep an eye on 3 key things. 1. Any formal agreement announcements from China or India declining new contracts with Russia, or announcing more diversification of energy sources away from Moscow. 2. Responses from Russia, will it adjust by offering steeper discounts, alternative payment schemes such as barter or rupee-renminbi trade, or turn further south toward other buyers in Africa or the Middle East? 3. Reactions from the US and other Western powers, will they tighten enforcement of secondary sanctions or broaden scope to further deter China-India participation with Russia? In conclusion, what we're witnessing is not simply a breakdown of a deal, it's a realignment moment, one where major powers are recalibrating who they will trade with, how they will pay, and what strategic alliances they will maintain. The headline figure of $158 billion captures just the scale of what's at stake for Russia. But the deeper story is about choice. China and India are sending signals that even very large deals, very large strategic suppliers, can be rejected if the cost of participation is perceived to be too high. Meanwhile, the US appears to have upped the ante, recognizing that sanctioning Russia is only part of the challenge. The bigger part is persuading or compelling key buyers to step away as well. Thanks for tuning into I-24 News. If you found this briefing useful, please like and subscribe, turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update, and leave your thoughts below. What do you think China and India's rejection means for global power dynamics? I am Terry Moran. See you next time.